Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this really, really special program. It is an honor and a privilege to have so many holy priests sitting in front of me on my screen. This is very unique. I have never done anything like this before. So before we introduce our illustrious guest speaker, I just wish to thank a couple of people. First of all, I'd like to thank all the shuls involved in tonight. So Belmont Shul and Shenley and Stanmore and the Or Yisrael Shul, which they've just had a new logo. They call themselves the Heart of Hertfordshire. I thought I was also in Hertfordshire, so I don't know how I feel about that logo, but it's wonderful that we've been able to spread this so widely and to have so many people joining from so near and far. So to all of you watching live on Zoom, and to the millions who will watch this on catch up later on YouTube, it's really, really special to have you here. And if I can also just single out one other person, the member of Bushy Shul, Adrian Cohen, who approached me probably coming up for a couple of years ago now to ask if we can get the Kohanim together, offer some kind of program, a little catch up, a little refresher, some insights. So this has been a long time coming, and we're not able to do it in physical proximity to each other, but it's so wonderful that we're able to do it nonetheless on Zoom and be together in this way. So it's to me now to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. We have Rabbi Tzvi Cohen with us. He has been a Cohen since birth, perhaps unsurprisingly, originally from Southgate. He studied in some of the most prestigious Talmudic institutions in Gateshead and LSJS, Middlesex University. He is the rabbi of Kingsbury United Synagogue, as well as being the associate head of probably one of the best primary schools in London, I would say. And I say that because it's my children's primary school, Noam Primary School. And it's a big, big pleasure to be able to welcome Rabbi Tzvi Cohen to address all of you this evening. So without further ado, put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Rabbi Tzvi Cohen.
Thank you very much. I can remember and still picture in my mind coming to the end of Simchas Torah as a youth in Southgate Youth Service and thinking, there's not going to be duchening for another 6 months, and the upset and the sadness. And with lockdown, it's now been a year for many of us since we've been able to do Berachos Kohanim, to been able to duchen in Shul. Obviously Pesach and Shavuos we missed, so it's not since last Sukkot, unless anyone's watching this from Eretz Yisrael, in which case things might be a bit different, as we'll discuss. Obviously all Yomim Tovim are wonderful, but as a Cohen we have that, I think, that little bit extra. And one of the highlights of Pesach for us is my parents, who should be well, long lived, join us for the first days of Yom Tov, and to have 3 generations duchening together is something very, very special. I'm sure you all know the joke about the guy who goes to the rabbi. He says he wants to be a Cohen, and eventually, after some money changing hands and a lot of discussion, says, "Why do you want to be a Cohen?" He says, "Well, my father was a Cohen, my grandfather was a Cohen." You all know that one, so I'm not going to tell it. But you might not know about the fellow who, non-Cohen, desperate to be. It's not fair. These people always have aliyahs, and they're always given benching, right? And they're given so much covered, so much honor. And I want to be a Cohen, so he says, "What can I do?" So somebody says, "Look, go somewhere where they don't know you, and when they ask if you're a Cohen, say yes. Move somewhere new." So he goes somewhere new and moves into a new community, and they ask him, "Are you a Cohen?" He says, "Yes, I'm a Cohen," and they call him up every week. Well, whenever there's lady, he gets Cohen. He's given all these things. At the end of 120, he goes up to the heavenly court, and they say to him, "You liar! You fooled a community for decades. You're going to be given a year of the worst that Gehenna can offer." And after the year, he's brought up, shriveled, frazzled, and they say to him, "Right, you're going back for another year." He says, "That's not fair. This is the Olam HaEmes. This is the world of truth. You said I had a year. And a voice said, Bim Koim Levi. I can't hear any sound, so I hope you're all laughing. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share, and by all means, I assume, Rabbi Nick, that everyone's able to unmute themselves if they need to. Yeah. So if you have any questions as we're going along, you can either. Oh, don't know why you're screen sharing. Okay, that's not the unmute, but okay, this is my one. So if you have questions as we're going along, please, by all means, we're a small enough group that you can interject, or you can wait till the end and we'll take questions there. So Birchas Kohanim, and just if you move the little screen thing around and you can see whatever it is. So there's a little picture of Duchening at the Kosel, and we, and again, I don't know about you, but one of the things I like to do as a Kohen is Duchen in different places. So obviously, if you're in Eretz Yisrael, to Duchen at the Kosel, the Kotel, what better? One morning, I took my sons into the Churva as well. That's at Central Synagogue in the Rehov, in the old city of Yerushalayim, and it's always an interesting experience to get into different places. So where does Duchening come from? And again, I apologize if I tell you nothing new at all. Brilliant, you know it all. And if I miss things out, again, I'm happy for somebody to flag it up when we do get to the end. We don't have the service of the temple anymore. The korbanos, the sacrifices, the closest we get is the reading about them, the learning about them. But there's one part of the temple service that remains, and that's from tabernacle times, when our ancestor Aaron stood up before the people and blessed them. That bit of the temple service does remain in some way, and for us to have a part in that is an amazing thing. And here we have the Birchas Kohanim, these three sentences, 3 psukim, 15 words. We'll look at them a little bit more carefully as we go along. So there's a story told. It's a true story about a young man who was trying to decide where to go in life. He was from a very religious family, but his father had different ideas about what his children should do. There was always somebody in the family who stayed in a rabbinical role, but his father felt that he should go into a business role. So young Shimon Schwab went, and this is the older Shimon Schwab, went and saw the Chofetz Chaim, the great Kohen Gadol of Radin, passed away in 1933. And he went in and wanted advice. And they were talking, and the Chofetz Chaim said to him, "Tell me, are you a Kohen?" And young Shimon Schwab said, "No, I'm not." And they started talking, and after a few minutes, the Chofetz Chaim said to him, "Are you a Kohen?" He said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, my father's not a Kohen." They carry on talking. The Chofetz Chaim says to him, "Are you a Kohen?" He says, "No, I'm not." He says, "Why not?" He says, "Well, my father's not a Kohen." He says, "Well, why not?" He says, "Well, his father wasn't a Kohen." He says, "No, I'll tell you why not." He says, "Because when Moses came down from Mount Sinai and saw the people dancing around the golden calf, he called out, 'Mi Lashem Eli,' who is to Hashem should come to me. And the tribe of Levi stepped forward. They hadn't been involved at all. We're from Shevet Levi. So, and a select part of them are the Kohanim. So the Chofetz Chaim, next time you hear the call, make sure to give the right answer. Mi Lashem Eli. So we're Kohanim because of our ancestors. We're from the tribe of Levi. I was talking to my class about censuses, but only Parshas Bamidbar, and talked to them about how a census is done every 10 years, and how I've been looking online, researching my family history, looking at Dutch censuses, which are all online, and my German's good enough to understand the written Dutch. And I talked to them about this a bit, and then we talked about the census of the tribe of Levi. And I said, anyone know the names of Levi's 3 sons, Gershon, Kohos, and Merari? I said, I happen to know that I'm from Kohos. Can anyone tell me how I know? Hand went up. I said, yes. I said, did you find out online? So, no, I didn't find out online, but as a Cohen, we are from Kohos, who is from Levi. So that's who we are. I'm not going to go through this inside, but just pick out the key things. This is a Medrash Rabbah. One of the Midrashim Sefer Ben Midbar, who says that from when the world was created, God, Hashem Kadosh Baruch Hu here, wanted to bless the people, and he first blessed Adam and Eve, he then blessed Noach, and then when it came to Avraham, he said, Habrachos mesuros lach, the blessings are handed over to you. Avraham, however, didn't want to pass them on to the next generation, because who does he give them to? I mean, to just give it to Yitzchak, not to give it to Yishmael, he left it to God. So when Avraham died, Hashem came and gave it to Yitzchak. When Yitzchak died, Yitzchak came and blessed Yaakov. You know the story with Esau and Jacob. And then Jacob blessed the 12 tribes. But from then on, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Hari habrachas masuras lachem, I'm giving you the power of blessing. HaKohanim yu mevarchem esponai, it'll be the Kohanim that bless my children. Kashem shamasi le'Avram avihem ve'ebracha, just as I said to Avram, their father, you'll be for a blessing, you bless others. And therefore it says, it's now the Kohanim, koi savarachu, so you should bless. So we're part of a chain. From Hashem to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the tribes, it's now onto us to bless the people, God's people on his behalf. So who are we? So looking back at our origins, Hillel and Shammai, they received the tradition from Shmaya and Naphtali and their teachers, and Hillel used to say, you should be disciples of Aaron, loving peace and pursuing peace, loving mankind and drawing them close to Torah. Our ultimate Zayda was a man of tremendous love, of tremendous peace. And when we bless the people, that's the channel that we're passing on. All you need is love. I won't sing, but it's interesting, when the blessing is given, it doesn't say, I'm commanding you to bless. It goes straight into Kosavaruchu. This is how you should bless. Almost that it's obvious that Kohanim are going to want to bless their fellow Jews. The only question is, how? And we'll see how soon. However, there's another side to us Kohanim. Gemara says, Gemara in Kedushin, if you see a Cohen is arrogant, so you know he's really a Cohen. As it says, your nation is argumentative like a Cohen. We can be bad-tempered, Kohanim ragzonim heim. We're also Kohanim zerizim heim, we're alacritus. As the people that served in the temple, we got on with things. We didn't leave things, and so the Gemara discusses this on numerous occasions. And occasionally there could be the odd punch up in the temple as to who got to do the service. And I still suggested that, often you need an equal balance. If we were all love, we could be perhaps trampled on, and that can go to an extreme. So it's tempered with a bit of a temper, perhaps. So do be careful, don't start with the Cohen. So when do we duchen? So there are huge, widely ranging customs, and even in Israel, and there are various ways to learn. In Southgate, when I was growing up, there was what I call the Walensky tape. So one of the Walensky brothers had made a tape of duchening on those old sort of TDK cassettes. On it was a picture of how to hold your hands, right, which was drawn, and then any Kohen, it was bar mitzvah, got the tape to pass on to the next Kohen. So when I'd finished, I passed it on to Danny Kaplan. So that's how you learn. Now also, there's lots of things published. Many of you may have the art scroll Birchas Kohanim. There's Eddie Katz has produced something called the Ani Avarachem, a guide to Birchas Kohanim. It's a very handy one. In terms of laws of purity and impurity, perhaps we'll talk about that later, the Cohen's Handbook, and standard halachic works, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Brura. If you want to look into things more deeply, there's a section in the Gemara in Sotah. We could give hours and hours of shiurim on these things, but I'll try not to take that long. So that's how to learn. The other way to learn, I found, is by making an abject fool of yourself. And I've done this on numerous occasions. So even in Israel, there are different customs. In Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, the custom is to duchen every single day. So on my very first visit to Israel, as an 18-year-old, I was happily duchening every day. And then I went up to Tzfat. and duchend on I don't know what morning it was. And at the end, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva Duchendin came over to me and said, why did you duchen this morning? I said, well, you duchen here every day. He said, no, we don't. That's Yerushalayim, that's Jerusalem, and the places that follow their custom. It says, but in the north, they don't, right? It's only on Shabbos, Yom Tov, in some places with laning. They're all different customs. So even in Israel. Outside of Israel, again, depends whether you're Sephardi or Ashkenazi. Our custom is only to duchen on Yom Tov. And if Yom Tov falls on Shabbos, as it does this year, then different communities have different customs. Some don't. So the custom in the United Synagogue officially is not to duchen. In Kingsbury, we're a bit naughty. Because the Rabbi's a Cohen, he suggested something else. So we do duchen. However, we don't do the singing, and we'll explain why that is a bit later on. Why it is that some communities don't duchen on a Shabbos. So the Mishnah Berurah writes that one would want to be in a state of purity in order to duchen. And it could be that one hasn't had the opportunity to go to mikveh, and therefore perhaps one was involved in a marital relationship on Friday night and you want to go to mikveh afterwards and you can't, and therefore one might not want to duchen. You can duchen even if you haven't been to mikveh, and the Mishnah Berurah writes this custom is shouldn't be kept. Nevertheless, it is a United Synagogue custom. There could well maybe other reasons for it, but again, different customs in different places. And I would say before you start doing things different, do check with your local Rav. So Yom Tov, obviously, outside of Eretz Yisrael, as I said, it's every day. We want to have a time when your mind is more relaxed, that you're more focused, and even on a Shabbos, your thoughts following straight on from the workday week could still be on mundane things, and it was felt Yom Tov alone one could be in the right state of mind. But there's some other situations we get ourselves into. What if you minyan hop? You've duchened in one minyan and you end up somewhere else. So you might be from a youth service into a main minyan, or an early one to a next one. What about then? So then you don't have to, but you can. Duchening is, as we saw, is a mitzvah in the Torah. You should do it. If somebody actually asks you to, you're in shul and they ask you to, they tell you to go out. So there's actually a transgression if you don't. Thing to do is get out earlier if you don't want to. What about an Ashkenazi and a Sephardi shul? So here in England, there are Sephardi shuls where they duchen either every day or on laning days or on Shabbos, different communities, different customs. And I've had this. So again, we have Sephardi cousins, and you go for a bris, and all of a sudden you realize the Kohanim are getting up to duchen. What do? So an Ashkenazi Cohen in a Sephardi shul can duchen. One shouldn't seek it out especially, but you are allowed. What about it? And apparently Reb Shalom Shvadron, the Maggid of Yerushalayim, whenever he came to England, would try and go to a shul where there was duchening daily, just to hear it, because coming from Yerushalayim, that's what he wanted. What about a child? So again, different communities have different customs. Some start, in Lubavitch, I think the custom is as soon as a child is 3, the father takes him under his talus and he joins in with duchening. Others write that when a child is of the age of education, from about 6 and 7, you can start them off. What we have done is from when the child is 12, brought them up. So a child can join in, but they shouldn't be the only Cohen duchening. If the child is the only one there, then that's not viewed as honourable, as covered for the congregation to have a group of adults and just one child up there blessing them. So what's in the name? It's got 3 names. Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the priests, the priestly blessing. Nesias Kapayim, raising the palms. So that's an interesting one. We pick up our hands. So why do we call it Nesias Kapayim, the raising of the palms? So...
Sorry, I think there's a spelling mistake there in the Hebrew.
Could be. Nesias Pachim, yes, raising of the jugs. L'chaim. Yeah, I had a teacher, Mr. Kaplan will remember, called Mr. Kraushaar, and at the beginning of the year he would say, every week I'm going to make a mistake or two on the boards just to see if you're paying attention. Yeah, so I do apologise. There's always going to be one. Right, so that should be Nasias Kapayim. Thank you for spotting. I'll edit before I use this ever again. My children are not listening in. They thought it'd be quicker if they just go through it with me afterwards. Yeah, so raising the palms. So, saw a commentary. I think it's in the art scroll there. If you look at your entire hand, your fingers are made up of 14 parts. You've got 2 parts in the thumb, 3 in the fingers, and then you've got your palm. And that corresponds to the 15 words in Birchas Kohanim, in Duchening. Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha, and so on, until you get to the word Shalom. The Gemara, the Mishnah in Uktzin, says there's no greater vessel for peace. Yeah, one of the hands. So there's no greater vessel for peace than that of, there's no greater vessel of blessing than that of peace. It's the Kli Machzik Bracha, the vessel that holds blessing. And therefore we call it in Nasias Kapayim, the raising of the palms, that our main focus here is Shalom. With all that we're blessing for peace. And if you think about it, most major prayers end with a prayer for peace. Think about Kaddish, Oiseh Shalom B'Romov, benching, the Amida, right, Sim Shalom, Oiseh Shalom. It's, peace. If you haven't got peace, whether it's peace at home, in your town, in your country, in the world, then you can't utilize all the blessings that you have. So raising the palms, right, so the blessing and which enables us to have everything else. And interesting, I'll leave that for soon. Okay, so Nasias Kapayim, and I'll correct that later. And Aliyah Duchen going up to the platform, which gives the sort of colloquial Duchening. Duchen is the platform. So in the temple there was the steps that they would stand on. So many shuls have a built-up Duchen, but not all do. And often you'll go somewhere and literally a small rug is put out for the Kohanim to stand on that. Okay, hit the road. So, don't come back. When do we go out and wash? So I've seen 2 major customs, and again, it could be different in your community. So I actually came across this when I came to Kingsbury, that in part of the middle bracha, in the repetition of the Amida, my voice, I'm saving my voice, I'm not going to do much singing today, saving it for Rosh Hashanah, but so make us rejoice in the establishment of the temple. Restore the Kohanim to their service, the Leviim l'shiram and the Zimram, and the Leviim to their sing and their song and their music. So here in Kingsbury, and maybe in many other places, that's the point where the Kohanim move from their seats in order to go and wash. And if there aren't many Kohanim, there's time to do it from there. As I remember in Southgate, and definitely we did this in Gates of Yeshiva, that when Kedusha ended, that was the point that we went out and washed our hands. I think that just the number and the distance to walk, you needed a bit more time. There are those that suggest actually it's better to wash inside the shul itself, so you don't miss any of the repetition of the Amida, and you can respond Amen. And actually, we in Kingsbury, just due to the physical change of the place, have actually started doing that. Okay, the next thing is taking our shoes off and then the actual washing. So before washing, it is actually suggested, in order that the bracha that we make on washing our hands takes us all the way through to Duchening, it's suggested that we try and be careful and not touch anything we shouldn't from when we wash our hands first thing in the morning, right, through till Birchas Kohanim. That's a long time, probably quite difficult, and therefore we do go and wash again just before the actual Duchening. But beforehand, we either loosen our laces or take our shoes off, and again, different customs here. Who washes us? So ideally it's the Leviim. If there's no Levi, and I've been in a situation like this, I was staying in, my in-laws live in one of the houses in Schonfeld Square, so I used to daven in the old age home quite a bit, and there were no Leviim there, So I told them, well, if there's no Levi, you get a Bechor, you get a firstborn. And there was these gentlemen in their 70s and 80s overexcited at doing this. They'd never done this before. They were really excited. Some suggest it's the shamus of the shul, and if not, then the Cohen washes his own hands. Where do you leave your shoes? So in many communities, what we do is we leave them outside. Wherever you've taken your shoes off, go and leave them there. And I do remember the nice neat line of shoes in the foyer, just at the bottom of the stairs there on Old Farm Avenue. Others, yeah, someone's got a question?
I think for this year, because of COVID, every Cohen is meant to wash himself.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's probably a good idea. You could probably technically still have your 2 meters, right? But yeah, probably better.
I think that's the recommendation from the centre.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. So we leave them either outside. Some people keep their shoes on just loose and then just slip them off before they go up, so that they're left in their place. They should be viewed. They should be left out of sight. It needs to be under a bench or something like that, so that they're not on view for everyone. That wouldn't be a kovodat tzibur. That wouldn't be appropriate for the community. Why do we take our shoes off? So, although there are deep ideas in removing shoes, like Moshe is told to take his shoes off at the burning bush and things like that, and shoes were not worn in the temple, the Gemara says it's much more pragmatic. We're worried that somebody's laces might break during duchening, during Berachas Kohanim. They'll bend down to sort them out, and then somebody looking would say, hang on a second, why is that fellow bending down? You must not properly be a Cohen. And then they'll start casting aspersions about the status of his family. Is he maybe there's some sort of problem? Maybe his parents were forbidden Cohen marriage or something like that. So that's actually the background to it, and therefore technically slip-ons would be less of a problem. In our communities, in our countries, we don't tend to walk around barefoot, and therefore one should be wearing socks, so no toes, please. How much of the hand do we wash? So the hand should be washed, really as whenever we wash, up to the wrist, and even on Yom Kippur, even when we wake up in the morning, we only wash up to the knuckles, but on Yom Kippur, Kohanim should wash up to the wrist. So that's our washing. And again, in the temple, not only were hands washed, feet were washed as well. That's not our custom, although you can have an enthusiastic Levi who does end up washing your feet as well. Okay, so when do we get moving? So it should be during Ritzei. So either just at the end of the bracha, Mekadesh Yisrael v'Hazmanim, or the Rosh Hashanah or the Yom Kippur ending. Really, as Ritzei starts, Kohanim should be on the move. And in the events that a Cohen is the Chazan, which again is not ideal but guilty, then the Cohen does need to actually make a little move, just a little shuffle forwards during Ritzei. If you haven't moved by then you can't go up to Duchen, and one would have to go out. We go up at that point. We go up to onto the Duchen in front of the ark. Custom is to kiss the paroches, but again, this year, I think a nod in the direction as opposed to a physical kiss, and because if many of us are touching, then again, germs will move around. We join in with the Se'oriv and with Modim, and then there's a prayer, especially for us to say. Yirotzim be your will, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem our God, v'Elokei Aviseinu. I took this off Sfaria, and I did add in choloms where I noticed they were missing, but any missing dots, please don't blame me. Shetei habrocha hazos, that this blessing, shetzivisonu, that you've blessed us, that you commanded us, levorech es amecha Yisrael, to bless your people Yisrael, brocha shalema. It should be a complete blessing. V'lo yeh bo shum michshol, there should be no stumbling. We shouldn't get the words wrong. V'ovoin, or any sin, we shouldn't get it wrong. Me'atov v'yad from now and forever. Now we say that during the Chol HaChayim, and the idea is to try and finish as the Chazan is finishing the bracha of Hatov Shimcha Lachon Noel Lahodos. Obviously, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where there's a lot more to say, you wait a bit, so that you can say that towards the end of the bracha. So some years ago, I produced little cards because to take a siddur up to the up there is a bit difficult. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there's lots of other things to say you might need to, but for the Sholosh Regonim, for other Yom Tov, little card which has got the Se'orev and Modim on one side, and then the prayers we say at the beginning of the end, this Yehi Rotzain, and then the Rebbeinu Shalom that we say at the end. Good if you can learn them off by heart. That saves stress. I have seen them in little like pockets next to the ark in shuls in Israel and other things like that. But and I did give one in a shul somewhere else in London. It wasn't in Southgate, so it wasn't in Kingsby, somewhere else. I gave one to somebody who knew was a Cohen, and whenever I went there, every other Shabbos, it was proudly in his top pocket. So whether I should have done, I don't know. But there we go. So that's the prayer. That's the prayer we say. The idea of finishing together with the chazan is so that the omein that the community say goes on both the blessing of the chazan and the tefillah that we have said. Okay, we cover ourselves with a talis, and again, here's a photograph taken during the time of the temple. You notice, obviously, when this is an artist's impression, but you'll notice they've got their hands right up. That was the custom, and you'll see that, interestingly, apart from the Cohen Gadol, who wasn't allowed to raise his hands above the tzitz that he wore on his head, so therefore his would be a bit lower, but others would raise them up, if not higher. So we'll come to exactly where we should have our hands soon, but the main thing with the talus originally was to cover your head. The rest of the community are not meant to look at us as we're saying the brachos. Again, mainly this is a reminder of the temple when the divine presence actually came through the Kohanim. We're not meant to look at our hands, but nor are the people. So what our custom is to put the talus over our hands as well, and ideally to have a bit of a dip, so that between our heads and hands, so that we can't see our hands. If that's not possible in your talus, you can't get it like that, just close your eyes. Thing is not to look at them, and the community should be facing the Kohanim. There were communities where people would turn round and have the backs of the Kohanim. We'll see that's incorrect. It should be facing, but again, talus over or eyes closed. Again, please do interject with questions or comments if you have. So the chazan calls out Kohanim. So this is another thing I learnt through embarrassment. Again, here's the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Sfas. I think that was actually the duchening on the wrong day, but somewhere else I was. So I went up there. I was the only Cohen, and got a lady to wash my hands. Got up there. It got to after B'chol HaChayim, and the chazan went silent, and I was waiting. And somebody shouted, well, "Nu," right? Boruch, right? Ritzei, they all didn't they? Right? And so I got going. So I then sat down and looked through the halacha, and discovered that when there's only one Cohen, the chazan doesn't say Kohanim out loud. You learn through experience, right? It's only when there are two or more. The Am Kadoshech HaKa'amor, Kohanim don't respond. The Kehillah say that, we don't. We then say a bracha before our bracha. Right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, Hashem, Asher Kiddushanu, that you sanctified us. And again, be careful, we haven't said it for a year. Don't say b'mitzvosov. B'kdushosoi shel Aharon, with the sanctity of Aharon, v'tzivonu, and he commanded us, l'vorech es Amei Yisrael, to bless his people Yisrael be'ahava, with love. And I'll put in all those missing chayloms for another occasion. So we say that blessing, it should be said all together. And there's a point at which we turn. And we turn to the right. At the moment we're facing the ark, we've walked up. And whenever you turn to the right. When do we turn? So there are three customs. Some people turn round before the blessing. Some people turn round at the end of the blessing. And I think the main custom in our communities is we turn just before the word V'tzivonu. So after B'kdushosai shel Aharon, the sanctity of Aaron, we turn round, face the community, V'tzivonu. Again, if it's different in your communities, be interested to hear. Also, a couple of customs about when to raise your hands. Again, some do it at the beginning of that blessing. Some do it as they turn round, and others do it at the end of the blessing. Mainstream customers. I did see a note. Can't remember. Okay, again, be interested to know what the custom is in your community. I think we've tended to do it as we turn round and pick them up, put them together and pick them up then. And again, with all that we're saying, it's good to stay together. So we're all saying it together. Just a couple of things. Something you shouldn't have done before this stage is have a large glass of wine. Rabbi Nick suggested that we have a glass of wine before. But a Cohen who's drunk a revius, which could be as low as 86 milliliters of wine, can't duchen. So normally that's not an issue because who's had wine before Musaf? Some communities do have a break on Rosh Hashanah before shofar blowing. So then you'd want somebody else to make Kiddush for you if you were going to use wine. And the other time is Simchas Torah. So many of our communities, we don't duchen on Simchas Torah for this reason. Others do at Shachris because the assumption is you won't have been drinking before then. Let's mention before with the washing of the hands. So I don't know if it's happened to you. It's happened to me. You've had your hands washed. You walk in, and somebody who's just come in goes over to shake your hand. Which means your hands need washing again. So the story of the Ponovitch Arov, of Yosef Kahneman, who in Bnei Brak, he was a Cohen, Levi had washed his hands, and a little boy came over to him and wished him good Shabbos. So the Ponovitch Arov took his hand, shook it, stroked him on the cheek, and said, didn't respond to Shabbos, but gave him a smile, and then went dash back and washed his hands again. He said, we don't want to embarrass people. That's okay. So a comment from my dad there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, before washing any watches and rings, definitely the rings taken off. Thank you for that. I don't wear either, so forgot about that. Okay. Right, how do we hold our hands? So there's a verse back in Parsha Shmini with a krikasiv, where the word is written one way in the Torah, but we read it another way. So Vayisa Aaron es Yodov, Aaron lifted his hands to the people and he blessed them. But it's written Yodoi, his hand. As a result, the custom is to put the hands together. There are numerous customs as to how exactly to put your hands out. One thing that seems to be relatively universal, not totally, is that there should be 5 gaps. So can you see my pointer as I wave it around? Is that visible to people? Yeah. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 gaps. That's hinted to in a verse in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, where we describe God as Meitzis min hacharakim, gazing through the gaps. In numerical value, Hey is 5. So he's gazing through 5 gaps. So there's a hint, and there are other hints from these verses about duchening, but that's so we place our hands in a way, we got 5 gaps. This one up the top, I think, is the mainstream custom. Not perfect. I couldn't find a perfect picture. The right, actually, this you can see the palms here. So the right thumb should be slightly on top of the left one, and then the fingers as displayed out there with our 5 gaps. Some have a gap there, There are all different customs according to Kabbalah, according to mysticism. One has all the fingers separated, so you've got 10 gaps for the 10 spheres, the channel of divine influence, down from the highest levels to the lowest. All different customs. Again, one has to try and find out what one's either family or community custom is. But in the absence of all of that, I would say I would go with this one, just putting your right thumb on top of your left. My dad can tell me afterwards if you... okay. The Gemara is a long Gemara in Sota, which talks about the 6 conditions that we need for Birchas Kohanim, for Duchening. I'm not printing out the Gemara. If there is interest and demand, perhaps that's something we could, I mean, let's say there's enough material to go for hours and hours and hours. But okay, condition number 1, it should be in Hebrew. Some learn this out actually from last week's Sedra. Sorry, 2 weeks ago, where we had the blessings given on Mount Gerizim and Mount Eval. So that a lot of what I like to call the Torah hyperlinks, a Gezerah Shava, key words throughout the Torah that connect. A bit like a hyperlink, when you press on something, it takes you somewhere else. So the Gemara does have a hyperlink of Koil, Savarochu, and Levorich, but it links these words together. But Rabbi Yehuda says it's from the word ko, like this. Koi Savarochu es Bnei Yisrael. This is how you should bless them, with these words as written in the Torah. It should be while standing. So again, when they were at the 2 mountains, they were standing as they received the blessings and the curses, and it hyperlinks to there. And also, like the service in the temple was always done standing, with raised hands, as we discussed when we saw in the first of Vayisa Aaron is the that Aaron raised his hands. Actually, all prayer, it seems, was done with raised hands, but there's been a bit of a takeover, and there are other religions that raise their hands in prayer, and so we've stopped doing so in most prayer, but Birchas Kohanim is an exception. The name of God needs to be used. The Somu es Shemi, they should place my name. Now, in the temple, there's a bit of debate as to exactly which name of God was used, whether it was a 42 letter name of God, or the 4-letter name of God, which we outside the temple are not allowed to say, literally reading the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey, the one before the witnesses. But nowadays we don't say that, and we say the name Adonai. Number 5, it had to be face to face. Say to them, like when you're having a conversation with somebody. So face to face. We face the people, they face us. That's from that word lahem. And it should be in a loud voice, clear, not rushed. How do we know that? Now you could have written Omoir just with a dot, just with a chaylam, without the vov. Why is it written mole? Why is it written full? Because it should be said in a full, clear way. If you ever go to Ger, the Kohanim there extend the last syllable right at the end to try and go as long and as loud as possible, so that when the Rebbe says Amen, he's saying it to theirs. Don't have to do that, but it should be loud and clear. As I said before, keep together. The chazan's not meant to start the next words until we've finished. We're not meant to get going until he's finished. The community aren't meant to say Amen until we've finished. And again, that he's not meant to start the prompting until they finish. So keeping together is handy. Yeah, as I say, wait for it. Twist and shout. So some places where we sway. So whenever we've got the suffix meaning you, and we want any people who daven at the sides. So again, growing up in Southgate, there are seats that run along next to the duchen, so they would move back, because the community should be behind, or I mean, next to is a bit of a debate, but at least behind where, in front of where the Kohanim are, definitely not behind, because then that looks like they're excluding themselves from the blessing. And we want that blessing, so to speak, to spread out to all of them. So we wave on all the chos and kos. So Yovarecha, he should bless you. We sway there. So on Yovarecha, V'yishmerecha, Eilecha, V'chunecha, final kaf there, Eilecha, Lecha, and then right at the end on the word shalom. So all the chos and kos and the word shalom, spreading that blessing to the entire community. Okay, tunes help you breathe more easily. So in Israel, there are no tunes. It's just said. The reason is that the prayers which we add in on Yom Tov, which the community say, which are annulment of bad dreams, they don't say there. So it's just straight through weekday, Shabbos, Yom Tov. Don't think there's any difference. But otherwise, and again, Shabbos, those of us that do Duchen on Shabbos, again, we don't sing then. One's not allowed to ask for personal things on Shabbos, and therefore our Amida, our standing prayer, is different on Shabbos to during the week. So as a result, the prayers that are added in before the last word of each of the three sentences, they're not said. So we just go straight into the word. There's no need for singing. Yom Tov we do. Yizkah in some communities has its own tunes. Now there are loads of different tunes. There are standards. There are standard ones that you'll come across in many communities. It's actually been so many years I don't remember the Southgate tune. In Munks, in Golders Green Base and Medrash, the custom in Frankfurt am Main was to have a different tune for each Yom Tov. And actually here in Kingsby, because the only Kohanim are my family, so we do a bit of those. So Pesach, it's a sort of variation on Adir-hu. Sukkot is like the Na'anuim, the tune that's used for waving the four species. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have their own. I do know I don't know the Shavuos tune, so we don't do that. Simchas Torah has its own tune, but we don't sing because we do it at Shacharis. And in some communities, Yizkah has its own tune. For many years, I duchened together with an elderly gentleman who only knew the Yizkah tune. So no matter what Yom Tov it was, we did the Yizkah tune. And as I say, the purpose of the singing is so that community can say these prayers. So I've seen a community where the tune was done almost for seconds, and there's no way, it was pointless. But there was no way anything could have been said in that time. Perhaps just nice, but my wife often tells me off that we sing too fast and she can't finish the prayer in time. But that's the purpose, that's the background. And again, I'm not going to teach you a specific tune because it's important to do the tunes that are familiar in your community. And Cohen is actually not meant to change them. Just when I got to Kingsby, there weren't any. So that's in terms of the singing. So let's have a slightly deeper look. There are pages and pages of medrash, of all different explanations of what the blessings mean. But apart from the basic translation, there's another level. So this is according to the Vilna Gaon, lived about 250 years ago. So Yivarechecha Hashem. So the Lord should bless you, says the Vilna Gaon. That means he should give you wisdom. V'yishmerecha, he should protect you. That refers to wealth. That the things that we have we should be able to keep and use. Yoy Hashem panav elecha. The Lord should shine his face to you. That's giving you life. Vichuneka, be gracious to you. You should have honor and respect, not be embarrassed or feel downtrodden. Yiso Hashem panav elecha. Hashem should raise his face towards you, should grant you children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. V'yosim lecha shalom, and he should give you peace. That, as we said near the beginning, the greatest blessing is that of peace. Without peace, we have nothing. And there are many other explanations. I say in the back here, he this one. He gives a whole series of other explanations. The art scroll one does as well. And as I say, there are pages and pages of medrash. Okay, so we're still up there. We've just finished our brachas. We've had all these lovely intentions. When can we turn round? So it's only when the chazan starts sim shalom. There's one exception to that. And that's if the chazan is the Cohen who's duchening. Ideally, if the Cohen is a chazan, he shouldn't duchen. In a case where he needs to, so he can. What some will do is so my colleague Rabbi Black will daven from the front and then be able to just turn round on spot. I do go to the front and turn and duchen then. So obviously I've got to come back and start sim shalom. But generally speaking, Kohanim should not turn round and still the chazan starts sim shalom. So we turn back at that point and only then lower our hands. Right, so should have mentioned so we discussed how the hands are. Our hands, and ideally our arms as well, should be at shoulder height. If that's difficult, so the hands can be brought, so the arms can be brought down, but the hands really should, where possible, be kept at shoulder height. If you've got a chazan who's doing lots of singing, which can be a bit painful, so then during our singing parts, we can lower our hands to let the blood go back into them, but then do bring them back up for any words. So we turn around, we put our hands down. There's then a prayer that we say. So, Rabbi Shalom, Master of the World, and again, it's on the little cards. We've done as you decreed upon us. Please do as you promised us. And this was the Sedra 2 weeks ago. Look down from your holy abode from heaven and bless your people Israel with the land you've given us, a land flowing with milk and honey as you swore to our fathers. That's the Sefaria translation. I would have gone for land apart from soil. But and again, we should try and get that in and finish off as the chazan is finishing off Hamavarach Yisama Yisrael B'Shalom or Oiseh HaShalom. So therefore on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, there's lots of other stuff that we say up there, and we sing Hayom Tam Seinu. So wait and say it and try and finish off together with the chazan's B'Shalom, so that the Amen goes on his bracha and on ours. Can I go now? So when can we walk down? So strictly speaking, after the chazan said B'Shalom, you can go down. The only time we really do that is on Sukkot, when we're going to then do Hoshanas. Otherwise, if it's going straight into Kaddish, we should stay there for the Kaddish, because otherwise what's going to happen is people start wishing us Shkoyach, right? And we're not responding to Kaddish. So we should be up there after Kaddish. The custom is to say Shkoyach, Yashakoycho, whatever it is. So there's a bit of a debate as to whether you should answer. Normally when somebody says Shkoyach, you say Baruch Tiyeh, you should be blessed. But now what you're doing is adding on to a bracha. You've just given a series of brachas. If you now add on a Baruch Tiyeh, there are some authorities suggest you're now adding to Birchas Kohanim, and you shouldn't do that. So thank you might be a better response. We put our shoes back on. If you touch your shoes, you're going to have to wash your hands again before you carry on davening, and therefore I enjoy slip-ons. Mum's the word. There are Kohanim who, strictly speaking, can't duchen, various reasons. If there are blemishes on the person that would cause somebody to stare. So there are two things that get round that. If the person is in a community and people are accustomed to seeing him, that will then not stop him duchening. And also we have our talisim over our faces. Nobody can see us anyway. So in practice, there's no blemish. I think actually technically, I think it's 147 different blemishes that would stop a Cohen doing the service in the temple. But in practice, in terms of Birchas Kohanim, not much is a problem. If a Cohen can't stand, so we saw one of the 6 conditions is standing, so that would be a problem. A Cohen who can't stand, I don't think, can duchen. And mourners. So during Shiva, definitely not. In Israel, it's only during the week of Shiva that this is an issue. After that, I think because it's done daily, they do duchen. Otherwise, during Shiva, one goes out. Our custom is that for the 30 days for a relative or the 12 months, one not duchen, even if you're the only one. However, if you're in there and somebody actually asks you, as we said, if you're asked and you refuse, that's a transgression. So then you would go up and duchen. But again, ask your local rabbi for the custom in your shul.
Rabbi,
Yes.
I thought if you were a novel and there was only one Cohen, then you were commanded to duchen to make up 2 Kohanim. But if there are 2 Kohanim, then you can go out as a novel.
Okay, so that may well be the custom in your community. Could be. I see. As we've seen, there are things that haven't. When we come down to even customs of mourning, lots of things are custom and will vary from community to community. So, a question for your local Rav. Okay, a soldier who's a Cohen who killed a terrorist, or a soldier who killed somebody, can they say Berachas Kohanim? So we have a principle in Aramaic, Ein Katega Nasa Sneka, the accuser can't become the defender, which is why the high priest would not wear gold in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur, not to be a reminder of the golden calf. That's also why we don't use a shofar from a cow. Right? Again, we don't have a reminder of the golden calf. Hands that have spilt blood, can they bless the people? So this question was put to Rav Ovadia Yosef, and you can look it up. I saw this some years ago, but I re-looked for it. So again, the Gemara says that a Kohen that murders another can't. Hands full of blood shouldn't bless. But Rav Ovadia was asked this about somebody who saw some Palestinians coming, and he opened fire. The soldier's question was, can he do Berachas Kohanim? He's killed a human being. Is he allowed to duchen? So Rav Ovadia Yosef said, yeah. He says, look, this is like a time of war, and if somebody comes to kill you, you kill them first. In effect, what you've done is save life, and they, such a person would be rewarded in heaven, and definitely can. I don't know if that chat was directed at me. Sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to share the slides afterwards. I'll email them to Rabbi Ketz, and he can share them out. Okay. Oops. Okay, so that's Berachas Kohanim, and again, happy to take questions soon. Kohanim and the deceased. So we have some positives. I remember when I first became a rabbi, so this is back in 2004, I had a meeting in head office, and one of the people we met with was Melvin Hartog, the head of the Burial Society, who was exceedingly frustrated that there were 5 new rabbis in the United Synagogue, all of whom were Kohanim. And he couldn't believe how frustrating this was, because this makes life a bit difficult at the cemetery. In the old days, we used to give families the choice. Would you like your relative in the hall and the rabbi would officiate from outside, or vice versa? Nowadays, the choice is given. The deceased is always inside. We stand outside. There was the memorable occasion of one of my colleagues, I won't say his name because I don't want anyone to work out who or what or when, but he spoke to the family, and they said, no, Rabbi, you be inside. We'll have the coffin outside. And then it started raining, and the daughter came over and said, my mum never liked the rain. Do you mind if we swap round and you stand outside? She'll be inside. So it is a little bit hard with a rabbi being a Kohen. And I must say myself, there are frustrations. There have been more than one case where I've actually been the first person contacted when somebody has passed away, and have had to be the person to inform the family. And the natural thing would be want to go to the hospital with them, or to go round to a house where there is the deceased is there. I've had these situations and had conversations with people in their front gardens or just on the phone. But we do carry that. We are the descendants of the priests that served in the temple. We look forward to a time again where we can do that, and with rights come responsibilities, and ultimately it's about doing it right. In one Rabbanus position I went for, I was asked about hospital visiting. So although we should try and avoid hospitals where possible, because we don't want to be under the same roof as somebody who's deceased, one can definitely, as a rabbi, visit, as long as the person is not literally in their last moments. The reason is based on a halachic principle called the sveka, a double doubt. Most people in the hospitals we will be visiting are not going to be Jewish, and in terms of being in the same room, there's only an issue that it's most likely only a problem with Jewish, although we try and avoid non-Jews as well. And most people go to hospital to live, so most people there should be alive. So one can. If it's not necessary, then we don't. Another issue is with flights. So many of you may remember that about a decade ago, a lot of the flights going out of Ben Gurion were going over the Cholon airport, which led to all sorts of interesting scenarios with plastic bags and other sorts of things. And also there can be situations where the deceased are taken on planes for burial in Israel. Should a Cohen be on that flight? I think one of the tricks I was told by a travel agent who's a Cohen is to take like the lunchtime flight, because normally coffins are taken on either the early morning or late night, in order that the coffins are not there in Israel overnight. And again, a question for your rabbi. And there is actually a group called the Va'ad HaKohanim. And if anyone's interested, there is a Kohanim WhatsApp group where you can ask questions and share interesting halachic things. But every sort of, Hoop Lane, for example, which for many years I just avoided. Now there's a group of people that go there, and every so often it's checked and the trees are cut back so that Kohanim can happily drive up and down. Visiting museums can also be an issue. I emailed the Natural History Museum, the Tring branch. I was interested in going there, but got asked them if they had any body parts. Got a reply from the Natural History Museum in town. They have over 19,000 body parts ranging from sort of fingers to entire bodies. Museums are a problem, and actually even for children. There is a famous response from Rabbi Moshe Sternbuch about how perhaps because the body parts are in cases, maybe it's less of an issue in the Science Museum. Personally, I avoid them all, and I love museums, but I'm a Cohen. Honor. There is a mitzvah of the Kiddushtoi to honor a Cohen. Do you recall a fellow in yeshiva trying to get in the front of the queue to wash his hands, saying, "Mechabed a Cohen, honor a Cohen, honor a Cohen"? No. If all things are equal, then you can offer it to a Cohen. You can't push your way in. The person in front, there's a reason why he's there. So we're offered benching, and as we said somewhat jocularly at the beginning, and we're call-ups. And again, the Cohen is asked, are you a Cohen? He says yes. He says, would you mind going outside? We've got 3 yort sites today. So again, one can be moichel on that and go outside. I was once in a shul in Stamford Hill, and somebody had bought the aliyahs for a bar mitzvah or something. I was very frustrated to discover that I as a Cohen was in there. But there we go. The rewards. So the final in the series of psukim there, of verses which describes Birchas Kohanim, says, "V'somo Shemi al bnei Yisrael." They will place my name on the Jewish people. V'ani avarachem, and I will bless them. Who's the them? So 2 explanations Rashi quotes there. Either I will agree with the blessing that the Kohanim have just given the people. I will verify that blessing. So having God say to you, I agree with what you said, that's quite something. Alternatively, I will bless them, I will bless the Kohanim. When we bless his people, he then goes on to bless us. So I'll conclude it there. And if anyone has any questions or comments, happy to share.
Not so much a question, just whether you wanted to mention a little bit about the significance of the word bi'ahava at the end of the bracha at the beginning. Okay,
so 2 things. Again, as the descendants of Aaron, who is the one who loved peace and pursued peace, apparently there were 22,000 children or men at his funeral called Aharon because he brought together so many couples that they got together where they then named their sons Aharon. So it has to be done with love. That means if you have a broigus with somebody, and I don't know if this is what you were referring to, but if there's somebody in the community that you actually don't like and you actually have feelings of enmity to, you should go outside and not duchen. But that's it. It should be done. It's something which is done with love, which is naturally what we should be feeling as Kohanim. Is that what you meant, or anything else?
Thank you very much, and thank you. Very interesting talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask really two questions all into one? Two ladies in our community in Edgware. One of them, well, senior lady, good friend, whose daughters won't let her go to shul, is very much missing the blessing, Birkat Kohanim. What can we do in order to help her through this experience? The second one is a lady who's really got a foot in both camps. She's half Sephardi and half Ashkenazi. She tends to go to the Sephardi shul, and she would come to the Ashkenazi shul if they were duchen there on Shabbos. Is there a good reason why the Ashkenazim don't duchen, whereas the Sephardim do on Shabbos?
Okay. So, to your first question, I mean, we use these verses when we bless our children on Friday night. There's a relatively modern custom of saying them, the rabbi saying them under the chuppah, or getting a Cohen to saying them under the chuppah. So I wouldn't do it with out of davening with hands actually raised in the way that we do in shul. But if for somebody to go round and just say the verses, I don't think there's any harm there. In terms of the not duchening on Shabbos, so as I said, the Mishnah Berurah says there's limited basis for it, to do with the not being able to go to mikveh, but mikvehs are quite prevalent, and even if you haven't been, you can duchen. However, we're reluctant to change existing customs. And a community that has a fixed custom, we don't change that. The Ramosha Isserlis, who's the sort of the basis of Ashkenazi custom, is very, very firm on this idea. We should not change custom, and so therefore, if unless there's a good reason to, but therefore, that is officially the minhagim of the United Synagogue. So if that is the established custom, then I don't think we can change it because people would like to hear it. As I say, by the time I came here, there's no longer a fixed custom. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And thank you for looking after all my grandchildren as well.
My pleasure.
Rachel Friedman.
Of course, yeah. I recognise I was trying to think where from. Lovely. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What I will say is that if anybody does have more questions, please feel free to email me. Also, Rabbi Cohen said that he will distribute the slides. So if you think that I might not have your email address, perhaps because you are from beyond the people that I contacted from Bushy, then please do drop me a line. You can email me, nice, easy new email address to remember, rabbinik@bushyus.org. That's rabbinik@bushyus.org. And I will make sure that you receive the slides if you would be interested in that. If I can, you have spent so many years blessing me. I would like in turn to offer you guys some words of blessing, just to thank you all for being here this evening. There is a famous question which Rabbi Cohen was mentioning before, which is, if the Kohanim are busy blessing plebs like me, who is blessing you guys? And Rabbi Cohen quoted one verse, and there's another verse as well at the beginning of Lech Lecha, right the way back, when God speaks to Abraham for the first time and charges him with the mission of following him, where he will make him great and make him into a nation and make him famous and rich and all the rest of it. And the words there say, Va'avarcha mevarechecha, I will bless those who bless you. And so I had a wonderful idea from a rabbi in America called Rabbi Avigdor Miller, who said that anybody who blesses another Jew will in turn be blessed. And so as Rabbi Cohen was saying, the mere fact that you guys get up there and you are charged with blessing the whole community, you in turn receive blessing. But there's an amazing idea which extends beyond this, which I think is extremely relevant, pertinent, and deep and helpful for the times that we find ourselves in now, because for many of you, you're not going to be in shul over Yom Tov and won't have the opportunity to bless the community from the Duchen. But he said as follows: any time that we give any kind of blessing to any kind of Jew, we will in turn be blessed, which means that just having in mind when you say good morning to someone, to really, really mean that they should have a good morning. Have a lovely day. I give you a blessing that you should have a lovely day. We underestimate how powerful simple good wishes, how simple gestures, how simple words that we don't even think are blessings, but we're just wishing people well. We just want what's good for them. And so any time that we take mundane words of conversation and we feel it and we mean it, we hope they have a good day, we wish them mazel tov on a simcha, you know, whatever it is, whatever we have to fill lives with blessings. Even if you're just walking past your friend's house and you think, I hope Hashem blesses him, I hope he has a wonderful day, I hope, whatever it is, whatever comes into our hearts and into our minds, anytime, Kohen or non-Kohen, whenever we bless another Jewish person, we will in turn receive blessing. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rabbi Cohen for being here this evening and sharing with us so much wisdom. I've learned a lot, but then I didn't really know anything beforehand. And just to take the opportunity to wish you all a Shana Tova, from the bottom of my heart, a happy, a prosperous, a sweet, and most importantly, healthy new year ahead. Thank you all for joining us. This YouTube very, very soon. Catch it on repeat, share it with your friends, and as I said, Shana Tova, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much.